Welcome to Toxic from Reddit, where real toxic relationship stories come to life. Here you'll hear true stories from people who experience toxic relationships from different perspectives. Partners dealing with cheating, manipulation, gaslighting, red flags, and all the emotional chaos that comes with loving someone who hurts you. Stories of betrayal, of finding strength to leave, of discovering the truth, of heartbreak, of healing, and the raw reality of toxic love. This is a real story, shared anonymously on Reddit. Some details have been changed to protect the identity of the people involved. Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. I'm 33 years old and I live in Denver, Colorado. And I need to tell you about the most humiliating and devastating moment of my life, which is that 3 weeks ago, my fiancé and I threw an engagement party at a beautiful venue with all of our friends and family in attendance. And in the middle of the party, a woman I had never met before walked in and introduced herself as my fiancé's wife, not his ex-wife, but his current legal wife. And she revealed in front of everyone that my fiancé had never actually divorced her, that he had been lying to me for the entire 2 years we've been together about being divorced, that he's been living a double life where he's married to her but engaged to me, that they still own a house together and share bank accounts, that he's been telling her that he travels for work when he's actually with me, and that everything he's told me about his past and his divorce has been a complete fabrication. And now I'm dealing with the devastating reality that the man I was planning to marry in 3 months is actually a bigamist, who is going to commit a felony by marrying me while still being legally married to someone else. I'm going to tell you this entire story from the beginning, because the level of deception is so calculated and so extensive that you need to understand how someone can maintain 2 separate relationships simultaneously, and how I was manipulated into believing a completely false narrative about my fiancé's life. My fiancé's name is Marcus. He's 38 years old, and we met 2 years ago at a professional networking event in Denver where we both work in the tech industry. The woman who showed up at our engagement party is named Vanessa. She's 36 years old, and she's been legally married to Marcus for 9 years. And she had no idea that Marcus was engaged to another woman until she saw photos of our engagement party being posted on social media by our friends. I work as a project manager at a software company in Denver, and I had been single for about a year when I met Marcus at the networking event. Marcus approached me at the event, and we started talking about our work in the tech industry, and I found him to be intelligent, charming, and attractive. Marcus told me that he was a senior software engineer at a tech startup, and that he had recently moved to Denver from Phoenix after going through a difficult divorce. Marcus said that his marriage had ended about a year earlier, and that he had moved to Denver to start fresh and to focus on his career. I appreciated Marcus's honesty about his past, and I felt like he was being open and vulnerable with me about his divorce. We exchanged contact information at the networking event, and Marcus asked me out to dinner the following week. On our first date, Marcus took me to a nice restaurant in downtown Denver, and we had a great conversation about our lives, our careers, and our interests. When the topic of his divorce came up, Marcus told me that he had been married for 7 years, that his ex-wife's name was Vanessa, and that they had grown apart over the years and had decided to end their marriage amicably. Marcus said that the divorce had been finalized about a year before we met, and that he and Vanessa had sold their house in Phoenix and had divided their assets and had gone their separate ways. Marcus said that he didn't have any children with Vanessa, which he said was one of the reasons their marriage had ended, because Vanessa had wanted children and Marcus hadn't been ready. I felt sympathetic toward Marcus because divorce is always difficult, and I appreciated that he seemed to have processed his divorce and was ready to move forward with his life. Marcus and I continued dating, and over the next several months our relationship grew stronger. Marcus was attentive, romantic, and thoughtful, and he seemed genuinely interested in building a future with me. Marcus would plan creative dates, he would surprise me with thoughtful gifts, and he would tell me how much he cared about me and how happy he was to have met me. I started falling in love with Marcus, and I felt like I had finally found someone who was mature, stable, and ready for a serious relationship. About 4 months into our relationship, I asked Marcus if I could see photos from his wedding to Vanessa, because I was curious about what his life had been like before we met. Marcus seemed uncomfortable with my request, and he said that he had deleted most of his photos from his marriage because looking at them was too painful and reminded him of a difficult time in his life. I thought this was a little strange, but I also understood that some people want to move on from their past relationships and don't want to be reminded of them. Marcus did show me a few photos on his phone of him and Vanessa at what he said was their wedding, and I could see that Vanessa was an attractive woman with dark hair and a warm smile. About 6 months into our relationship, Marcus and I decided to move in together, and we found an apartment in a nice neighborhood in Denver. I was excited about this next step in our relationship, and I felt like Marcus and I were building a life together. I noticed that Marcus traveled frequently for work, like he would often have to go on business trips that lasted several days or sometimes even a week or two. Marcus said that his startup was working with clients all over the country and that he had to travel to meet with these clients and to oversee software implementations. I found Marcus's travel schedule frustrating because it meant that we spent a lot of time apart, but Marcus would always apologize and would say that the travel was temporary and that once his startup became more established, he wouldn't have to travel as much. When Marcus was traveling, we would communicate through text messages and occasional phone calls, but Marcus said that he was often in meetings or working long hours, so our communication was sometimes limited. I trusted Marcus, and I didn't think there was any reason to be suspicious of his travel schedule. About a year into our relationship, Marcus and I started talking seriously about getting married, and Marcus said that he was ready to propose and that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I was thrilled, and I told Marcus that I felt the same way. About 6 months ago, Marcus proposed to me during a weekend trip to the mountains, and of course I said yes because I was in love with him, and I believed that we were going to have a wonderful life together. We started planning our wedding, and we set a date for 3 months from now, which would be in early December. We booked a venue, we hired a photographer, we sent out save the date cards, and we started working on all of the other details of the wedding. I was so excited about marrying Marcus, and I felt like everything in my life was falling into place. We decided to throw an engagement party to celebrate with our friends and family, and we rented a beautiful event space in Denver and invited about 80 people. The engagement party was 3 weeks ago, and it was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. The venue was beautifully decorated, there was great food and music, and all of our friends and family were there to celebrate with us. Marcus and I were mingling with our guests, and I was showing off my engagement ring and talking about our wedding plans, and everything was perfect. About an hour into the party, I noticed a woman walk into the venue who I didn't recognize, and she was looking around the room like she was searching for someone. The woman was attractive, with dark hair, and she was dressed nicely, but she looked upset or angry. I watched as the woman walked up to Marcus, and I saw Marcus's face go completely white when he saw her. I walked over to where Marcus and the woman were standing, and I said, "Hi, I'm Natalie, Marcus's fiancé, and you are." The woman looked at me with a mixture of anger and pity, and she said, "I'm Vanessa, Marcus's wife." I laughed nervously and said, "Oh, you mean his ex-wife? Marcus has told me about you." Vanessa said, "No, I mean his wife, his current wife. We're still married. We never got divorced." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, and I looked at Marcus and said, "What is she talking about?" Marcus was silent, and he looked like he was in shock, and he couldn't seem to form words. Vanessa said, "Marcus and I have been married for 9 years. We own a house together in Phoenix. We share bank accounts, and we're still very much married. I had no idea he was engaged to you until I saw photos of this party on social media." By this point, several of our guests had noticed that something was wrong, and people were starting to gather around us to see what was happening. I said to Marcus, "Tell her she's wrong. Tell her that you're divorced." Marcus finally spoke, and he said, "Vanessa, you need to leave. This isn't the time or place for this." Vanessa said, "Oh, this is absolutely the time and place for this. You've been lying to this woman and you've been lying to me, and everyone here deserves to know the truth." Vanessa pulled out her phone and started showing me documents, like she showed me a copy of their marriage certificate from 9 years ago. She showed me recent bank statements with both of their names on joint accounts. She showed me property records showing that they still jointly own a house in Phoenix. And she showed me photos of Marcus at their house in Phoenix that had been taken within the past few months. I felt sick to my stomach, and I looked at Marcus and said, "Is this true? Are you still married to her?" Marcus was silent for a long moment, and then he finally said, "Yes, it's true. I'm still legally married to Vanessa, but it's complicated." I started crying, and I said, "How is this complicated? You told me you were divorced. You told me that your divorce was finalized before we even met. You've been lying to me for 2 years." Vanessa said, "He's been lying to both of us. He's been telling me that he travels to Denver for work. I had no idea he was living here with another woman. I had no idea he was engaged." By this point, the entire party had stopped, and everyone was watching this scene unfold. My parents were there, my friends were there, Marcus's coworkers were there, and everyone was witnessing the most humiliating moment of my life. My father walked over and said, "Marcus, what the hell is going on here?" Marcus said, "I can explain. I was going to tell Natalie the truth. I was going to get divorced before the wedding." I said, "You were going to get divorced before the wedding, so you were planning to marry me while still being married to her. Do you realize that's bigamy? Do you realize that's a crime?" Vanessa said, "I want to know how long this has been going on. How long have you been with her?" Marcus said, "Vanessa, please, let's talk about this in private." Vanessa said, "No, I'm done with your lies. I'm done with your secrets. Everyone here deserves to know what kind of person you are. I took off my engagement ring and threw it at Marcus. And I said, "We're done. I never want to see you again." I ran out of the venue, and my best friend and my mother followed me. I spent the rest of that night crying and trying to process what had just happened. My best friend stayed with me, and she helped me start to piece together the truth about Marcus's lies. Over the next few days, Vanessa and I actually connected, and we compared notes about Marcus's behavior and his patterns of deception. Vanessa told me that she and Marcus had been having problems in their marriage for the past few years, but that they had never discussed divorce, and she had no idea that Marcus wanted to end their marriage. Vanessa said that about 2 years ago, Marcus had told her that his startup was expanding and that he needed to spend more time in Denver meeting with clients and overseeing projects. Vanessa said that Marcus would leave Phoenix for weeks at a time, supposedly for work, and then he would come back home for a week or two before leaving again. Vanessa said that she had found this arrangement frustrating, but that Marcus had convinced her that it was temporary, and that once the startup was more established, he would be able to work from Phoenix full-time. Vanessa said that she had no idea that Marcus was actually living with me in Denver, and that he had created an entire second life there. Vanessa told me that Marcus had been very careful to keep his two lives separate. Like, he had a separate phone that he used when he was in Denver. He had separate social media accounts. And he had told Vanessa that he didn't like to post about his work life on social media because he wanted to keep his professional and personal lives separate. Vanessa said that the only reason she found out about me was because one of her friends who lives in Denver had seen photos of our engagement party on social media and had recognized Marcus in the photos and had sent them to Vanessa. Vanessa said that when she saw the photos, she was shocked and devastated, and she immediately booked a flight to Denver and found out where our engagement party was being held, and she decided to confront Marcus in person. I asked Vanessa if she had suspected that Marcus was having an affair, and Vanessa said that she had sometimes wondered if Marcus was seeing someone else because he had been distant and distracted when he was home in Phoenix, but that she had never imagined that he was living an entire double life. Vanessa and I realized that Marcus had been incredibly calculated in how he maintained his two separate lives. Like, he had told each of us different stories about his work schedule and his travel. He had kept his finances separate enough that neither of us would notice unusual expenses, and he had been very careful about his social media presence. Vanessa told me that she was planning to file for divorce from Marcus, and that she was also considering whether to report him to the police for fraud or for attempting to commit bigamy. I told Vanessa that I supported whatever decision she made, and that I was grateful to her for exposing Marcus's lies before I actually married him. I realized that if Vanessa hadn't shown up at our engagement party, I would have married Marcus in 3 months, and Marcus would have been committing bigamy, which is a felony in Colorado. I also realized that our marriage would have been invalid because Marcus was already married to Vanessa, and I would have eventually discovered the truth in an even more devastating way. After the engagement party disaster, I had to deal with the aftermath of the public humiliation. Like, I had to contact all of our wedding vendors and cancel our contracts. I had to tell our guests that the wedding was off, and I had to explain to my friends and family what had happened. Everyone was shocked and supportive, and many people told me that they were glad I had found out the truth before the wedding. My parents were furious with Marcus, and my father actually tried to contact Marcus to confront him, but Marcus had blocked all of our phone numbers and had disappeared. I also had to deal with the practical aspects of ending my relationship with Marcus. Like, we had been living together in an apartment, and I had to figure out how to separate our belongings and our finances. Marcus had apparently moved out of our apartment while I was at work one day, and he had taken his belongings and had left without saying goodbye or leaving a note. I later found out from Vanessa that Marcus had gone back to Phoenix, and that he was trying to salvage his marriage with Vanessa, although Vanessa told me that she was definitely going to divorce him. I've been going to therapy to help me process the betrayal and the humiliation, and to help me understand how I was deceived so completely. My therapist has explained to me that people who live double lives are often narcissists or sociopaths, who are skilled at compartmentalizing their lives and at manipulating the people around them. My therapist has helped me understand that Marcus's behavior was not a reflection of my worth or my judgment, and that he was very skilled at creating false narratives and at maintaining separate identities. My therapist has also been helping me work through my feelings of shame and embarrassment about what happened at the engagement party, because having my relationship exposed as a lie in front of all of my friends and family was incredibly humiliating. But my therapist has reassured me that I have nothing to be ashamed of, and that Marcus is the one who should be ashamed of his behavior. I've been thinking a lot about the red flags that I missed or ignored, like how Marcus traveled so frequently and his schedule was so unpredictable, like how Marcus was evasive about his past and had deleted most of his photos from his marriage, like how Marcus never wanted me to visit him when he was traveling for work, and like how Marcus kept certain aspects of his life very private. I've realized that I ignored these red flags because I was in love with Marcus and because I trusted him when he gave me explanations for his behavior. I've learned that it's important to pay attention to red flags and that it's important to verify important information about someone's life, especially before you agree to marry them. I've been thinking about how close I came to actually marrying Marcus and about what would have happened if Vanessa hadn't discovered the truth and hadn't shown up at our engagement party. If I had married Marcus, our marriage would have been invalid because he was already married to Vanessa, and I would have eventually discovered the truth, probably when I tried to file joint tax returns or when some other legal issue came up. I would have been even more devastated if I had discovered the truth after we were married, and I'm grateful to Vanessa for exposing Marcus's lies when she did. I've been thinking about Vanessa and about how she must be feeling, because she's been married to Marcus for 9 years, and she's now discovering that her husband has been living a double life for the past 2 years. Vanessa and I have stayed in touch, and we've actually become friends in a strange way, because we're both victims of Marcus's deception, and we're both trying to heal from the betrayal. Vanessa has told me that she's filed for divorce from Marcus, and that she's also reported him to the police for fraud, because Marcus had been using their joint bank accounts to fund his life with me in Denver, without Vanessa's knowledge. Vanessa told me that the police are investigating, but that it's unclear whether Marcus will face any criminal charges. I've been thinking about whether I should pursue any legal action against Marcus, like whether I could sue him for fraud or for emotional distress. I talked to a lawyer, and the lawyer said that I could potentially sue Marcus, but that it would be difficult to prove damages and that it might not be worth the time and expense. The lawyer also said that if Marcus had actually married me while still being married to Vanessa, he could have been charged with bigamy, which is a felony. But since the marriage didn't happen, there's no crime to prosecute. I've decided not to pursue legal action against Marcus because I just want to move on with my life and put this entire experience behind me. I've been focusing on healing and on rebuilding my life. Like, I've been spending time with friends and family who support me. I've been focusing on my career, and I've been working on self-care and on activities that bring me joy. I've also been educating myself about narcissistic personality disorder and about people who live double lives, because I want to understand what happened and I want to be able to recognize the warning signs in the future. I've learned that people who live double lives often have a need for excitement and stimulation, and they get a thrill from deceiving people and from maintaining multiple identities. I've learned that these people are often very charming and very skilled at manipulation, and that they can be very convincing when they're lying. I've learned that it's important to trust your instincts, and that if something feels off about someone's story or their behavior, it's worth investigating further. I've been thinking about dating again eventually, but I'm not ready yet, because I need to heal from this betrayal, and I need to rebuild my ability to trust. When I do start dating again, I know that I'm going to be much more careful about vetting potential partners, and I'm going to be more assertive about asking questions and verifying information. I'm going to pay attention if someone is evasive about their past or their current life, and I'm going to trust my gut if something doesn't feel right. I'm also going to take my time getting to know someone before I commit to a serious relationship, because I've learned that people can hide their true selves for a long time if they're motivated to do so. I've been thinking about other people who might be in similar situations, who might be dating or engaged to someone who's still legally married to someone else, and I want to tell them to pay attention to the warning signs. I want to tell them to be suspicious if their partner travels frequently and has an unpredictable schedule, or if their partner is evasive about their past or their current life, or if their partner keeps certain aspects of their life very private. I want to tell them to verify important information about their partner's life, like whether they're actually divorced if they claim to be divorced, and I want to tell them that it's okay to ask for proof, like divorce papers or other legal documents. I want to tell them that if their partner gets defensive or angry when asked to provide proof of their divorce, that's a major red flag. I want to tell them to do a background check on their partner before they agree to marry them, because a background check can reveal whether someone is still legally married or whether they have other secrets in their past. And I want to tell them that if they discover that their partner has been lying about being divorced, they should end the relationship immediately, because someone who would lie about something that significant is not someone who can be trusted. I want to tell them that it's better to discover the truth before you get married, even if the truth is painful and humiliating, than to marry someone and then discover that your marriage is invalid because your spouse was already married to someone else. And I want to tell them that if they do discover that their partner has been living a double life, it's not their fault, and they shouldn't blame themselves for not seeing the signs sooner. I want to tell them that people who live double lives are very skilled at deception, and that even smart, careful people can be fooled. And I want to tell them that healing is possible, and that even though the betrayal feels devastating right now, they will eventually be able to trust again and to open their hearts to someone who's honest and authentic. I've been thinking about the engagement party and about how traumatic it was to have my relationship exposed as a lie in front of all of my friends and family. But I've also realized that having Vanessa show up at the engagement party was actually a blessing in disguise, because it meant that I found out the truth before I married Marcus. If Vanessa had waited to confront Marcus privately, or if she had never found out about me at all, I would have married Marcus, and I would have eventually discovered the truth in an even more devastating way. So even though the engagement party was humiliating, I'm grateful that it happened the way it did, because it saved me from making an even bigger mistake. I've been thinking about Marcus, and about whether he feels any remorse for what he did. Vanessa told me that Marcus has tried to apologize to her, and has tried to convince her to stay married to him, but that she's refused. Vanessa said that Marcus has claimed that he was confused, and that he didn't know what he wanted, and that he never meant to hurt anyone. But Vanessa and I both know that Marcus's behavior was calculated and deliberate, and that he knew exactly what he was doing when he created a double life. Marcus made a choice to lie to both of us, and he made a choice to maintain those lies for 2 years, and he was willing to commit bigamy by marrying me while still being married to Vanessa. Those aren't the actions of someone who's confused. Those are the actions of someone who's selfish and manipulative and who doesn't care about the people he hurts. I don't know what Marcus is doing now, and I don't care because he's no longer part of my life. I've blocked him on all forms of communication, and I've made it clear to our mutual friends that I don't want to hear anything about him. I'm focused on moving forward with my life, and on building a future that's based on honesty and authenticity rather than on lies and deception. Thank you for reading my story. And if you've been through something similar, if you've discovered that your partner was still legally married to someone else, if you've been publicly humiliated when your partner's lies were exposed, if you've almost married someone who is going to commit bigamy, or if you've had to rebuild your life after discovering that your entire relationship was based on deception, I would love to hear how you dealt with it and where you are now. I'm still healing from this experience, still processing the betrayal and the humiliation, still working on rebuilding my ability to trust, and still figuring out what I want my future to look like. But I'm grateful that I found out the truth before I married Marcus, and I'm grateful to Vanessa for having the courage to show up at our engagement party and to expose the truth even though it was difficult and painful for both of us.